This episode of Outside Insights is brought to you by Placers, a values-led staffing partner helping businesses and individuals reach their highest potential. Build a flexible workforce or take the next step in your career at myplacers.com. Welcome back to Outside Insights. I'm your host, Chris Burkhardt. Today, I'm thrilled to have not just one, but two returning guests on the show. You may remember Dr. Marnie Stockman and Nick Coniglio from when they joined us to talk about their book, Lead It Like Lasso. Great conversation full of leadership and energy and practical wisdom and just great leadership lessons. And guys, before I connect with you, is there going to be another season? Did I hear there might be?
Oh, yes, there is. Yeah, there'll be a season 4.
Well,
they are filming right now.
Maybe we can weave that in a little bit. I thought you might know. They're back this time, diving into a brand new book, The Business of You. Ask the right questions, tell your story, and lead your life. Marnie, Nick, welcome back to the show.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, we're happy to be here.
I have to tell you, I devoured the book, and I guess the ultimate compliment is that I wish I wrote it.
Oh, that is the ultimate compliment. You can go put that on an Amazon review.
I think all right, I think I will. And I did, listen, I do read the books with the guests. I have it here as proof. I love the idea of a fable, if you will, a story that it's so easier to read, but it's also a great actionable playbook for those that are thinking about their career differently. Where's the inspiration for this book? Where did it come from? And the lead character is Sydney. Who is Sydney?
Yeah. Nick, you want to start with part 1?
Yeah. Well, would you believe that the inspiration came from a bathroom in an airport in Western Arkansas, of all places?
Well,
but that's where the idea,
Arkansas, right? I mean, I'm glad it was Western. Like, how does that happen?
Yeah. Well, Marnie and I had been talking about for years since we had sold and exited our software company. We wrote Lead It Like Lasso. Our passion project has always been to find a way to help people really stand out and differentiate themselves in this ever noisy and complicated world. At Marnie's background as a teacher, myself growing up, in startups and really bringing people in who really had nothing to do with the industry that I was working in, startups, and seeing them grow, and then seeing both of ourselves grow, we find ourselves in a position where we have some security, and our passion project is really, okay, how can we find a way at scale to help as many people as we possibly can, given not only what we have learned and the mistakes that we have made, but through those kitchen table conversations with our kids. And we have the pleasure and opportunity to mentor a lot of young people. And in doing so, we had always envisioned this app, this idea of a personal career coach in your pocket. And as we were kind of sketching out the features and functions of that app, we were at an airport in northwestern Arkansas. And and Barney, you can take it from here. Just kind of finish it up.
We were literally sketching out the requirements, like Nick said. And I said, oh, this is like writing a fable, like The Go-Giver. And, Nick then said he had to run to the restroom, which was right behind our gate. So, I mean, we're talking, he's back in 60 seconds. And he comes up and he says, hey, I had a terrible idea. And I said, in the bathroom? And then he said, actually, you had a terrible idea. And I said, while you were in the bathroom? I mean, maybe, but how do you know? And he said, I think we should write that fable. I think we should write that book because, to your point, who's Sydney? Sydney is a character that all of us can see in ourselves in some way. And so we should tell the story so people can feel like the story is about them. So you asked who Sydney was? Sydney's no one person, kind of an amalgamation of so many of the students we've worked with. So we have talked to so many who either were going down the path that was put in front of them, but not the path that they chose on their own, or had gotten the grades, done the internship, taken the classes, gone to the clubs, but they weren't finding the job that they wanted. And they weren't being successful in standing out and getting the job of their dreams. So Sydney's that person, the person who's stuck a bit. And that's how we got to The Business of You.
Marnie, I think the timing's good that the books come out. This is being recorded in October of 2025. Will come out in the fourth quarter of 2025. Book written in August of 2025. It's been out a little bit. but it's very timely in today's market. If
Oh,
you had
yes.
put this book out 2 years ago, the workforce might say, I've got lots of choices. I can be my own agent. I can shop
Yep.
around, and I don't know, guys. I get a job in a day.
Yeah.
Now, I've been in the industry that sort of monitors that for a long time. The truth is, it's cyclical, it's countercyclical, it swings back and forth. The workforce feels more in control when there's 3 jobs for one of them. Now there's 1 job for one of them. But this is great advice regardless of
Absolutely.
timing and things.
Well, and it's not just the job market that's impacting it, but also AI, because so many where you might have had 10 or even 100 people apply for a job now, you're getting thousands if you're using any automation. So you're getting thousands of people applying for a job. All of the resumes are coming over looking nearly identical because they've all got to be put through an applicant tracking system. So they all look very similar. So the only way you're going to stand out is if you understand who you are and can state your story clearly.
I agree completely. And I liked your point at scale. It's the whole reason I started this podcast was my audience is Sydney, and the thought process of, how do they get ahead? How to have the life they want? How do they get the earned life? I think this is about the skills that you talk about in the book. How would we've got all day if we want it, but why does someone read the book? What can they get from it? I think I got to give them that early, and then we can roll it all out. But what does someone get if they read this book?
Yeah, well, I think they get a lot. I mean, we call it the business of you, and one of our premises is that really every successful person that we have encountered in our lives ran their own lives like a business. And what we mean by that is, yes, they're the CEO of their own lives, and in that they take control, but they're also the head of HR, where they identify what drives them, what makes them tick. They are the head of marketing, where they create the brand that is visible out to the world, sales, where they provide value, on and on. We go through learning and development and have surrounding yourself with a personal board of advisors. But really the ideal person, for us, who we're trying to connect with is those people who feel like, again, like Marnie said, they're doing the right things because that's traditionally what has been done. What we're trying to introduce here is that the game has changed. And again, it's all the noise, it's all the technology and automation that surround us. We often talk about the notion of character revolution. We didn't come up with that. Dr. Adam Grant did. But with all this access to technology, really technical skills are becoming more and more commoditized. And at the end of the day, how you differentiate yourself in the cast of the sea of thousands of other candidates who are looking for that same job is through networking. It's through how you tell your story. It's not just reciting facts, it's telling stories. It's who you surround yourself in terms of connections. And we try to offer through the lens of Sydney, this amalgamation of a whole bunch of people who are in a similar position, some of the strategies to do that. Really, if you're anybody who's in either embarking on a career, even if you're a student trying to get into college and differentiate yourself, or if you're somebody who's in a career that just doesn't feel right and is looking for something different to do, we feel like we give you a full picture of how you might approach making some changes in your life.
So, Nick, I think you've done a heck of a job there because it's written in a fable fashion where it's really, really easy to absorb. But I've spent my whole life trying to have the dialogue that we're having about how you differentiate. And if you're not used to differentiating, it's really hard to absorb, process, hear. So I think stick with us because the book itself makes it really easy to learn the lessons. It might be harder to talk about if you guys don't mind. But what you just laid out is, I had a question. What does it mean to run your life as a business? Well, assuming you've either studied business or worked somewhere, there is marketing that is brand of that product, which is your personal brand. There
Yeah.
is learning and development, which is how people learn in the business, which is how you learn yourself. And I could go on and on. But the gist of it is thinking of yourself as all the departments of a business and how it applies and how those lessons fit how you differentiate in a world that's really hard to differentiate.
Yeah.
Is that
And,
fair?
LinkedIn will happily tell you to be the CEO of your own life. There's hashtag CEO of you out there, right? Be the boss of you, etc. But when people think of that, they're not thinking of all of those other pieces that they're responsible for. They're thinking, great, I'm the boss, so someone else is going to take care of X, Y, or Z for me. But you have to really be attentive to all of those places, because every bit of that is what's making you you. And so if you want to differentiate yourself, you've got to take charge intentionally of each of your departments.
And you do have to be able to raise the bar in each of those departments. That's hard.
Yeah.
That is
That
definitely
is hard. Yeah. They're definitely, people have strengths in different areas, but you've got to be aware that you're still in charge of all of them, whether it's a strength or not.
So my mentor, this is the challenge, is I had a very good mentor, very good board of advisors, still do. And I hope we can talk about what that is since I'm discussing it. But I was always taught that there's a gap in between everything we do and what we achieve. So it's like what we know, it's what we got done. It's how we use our time. And if we could just close that gap constantly, that you'd be surprised. You look up and one day you'll get where you want to get. That got me far, but there were times where I was just working on everything, right? Like, because this makes it easy, because at least you have the departments of a business to think about, like, what do I need to work on and why? Why we're there. The idea of having a board of advisors. It's a phenomenal idea, but somebody build it out a little bit.
So the board of advisors is really the people that can support you. But a lot of folks think first it stems a bit from, you are the average of the 5 people that you surround yourself with, or that you're with the most often. And I've definitely talked with students before and said, who's bringing your average down, right? We need to level it up. But it's not just the people you're hanging out with. It's the folks that can really push you to be your best version. So we talk about different types of folks. You really need to look for a mentor or advisor, right? Somebody that's been there, done that, can help you get there. You need a challenger. This is the one I find is the most important for me. You need the challenger, someone that's going to push you, ask you the hard questions, be willing to not just let you keep down the path if it might not be the best one for you. And then a connector. And a connector is not just someone that connects you with other folks or networks, but they can really open opportunities for you. So we really encourage people to think intentionally about each of those roles, because that team can really open doors for you and create opportunities where you didn't think one existed.
I imagine you just get started. You find one, you go with one until you find each piece, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it doesn't happen overnight, for sure. Again, like everything else, you need to be intentional about it. But I think where we found when we started working with a lot of people is that they didn't even know what they were looking for in terms of who should be on the personal board of advisors. And we have the opportunity. We work mostly with young people, and we realized right out of the gate that it may be a challenge to develop a relationship with a connector, but you start somewhere. You start with your professors, your instructors, those folks that you work for through your internship, church group members. It doesn't matter, right? It's trying to seek out those people and then start asking the question of, okay, what role do these people actually fill for me? And I know Marnie fills 2 of those roles for me right out of the gate. She's a dual member in that she is the connector of the 2 of us, but she's also the challenger. She is very quick to although we have a great working relationship, she's not afraid to challenge any of my ideas. And I'd like to think that that's vice versa. So
Even more
it's
so.
really
Yeah.
being intentional to seeking it out.
Well, I think you touch on something very interesting there. The very story of technology and AI and social media can convince you that networking and meeting with people and having a board of advisors is hard or different or not the way not that easy. But I think, like anything, it has to be worked on. When I first started my business, I'm not 30 anymore. I was when I started it. And I met with someone brand new for 300 straight business days and told my story. Well, I'm proud of it because I had no choice, right? Like I had to tell my story because I was an entrepreneur starting out.
Yeah.
And I guess it's amazing what you do when you're hungry, right? But I don't know a college student that isn't hungry, or someone that, you're trying to get ahead with something. But I just think you end up needing people that will take your call at 3 a.m., that will say yes before you even ask them what you want them to do, But
Yeah.
ultimately, I like the roles that you're talking about. And I think about mine. I didn't even realize I have a challenger, but I've always had a challenger, and even more than the connector sometimes, So, but it can be done, folks. But it has to be cultivated and worked on, and it changes. That list will change over time. People rotate
Yeah.
in and out.
Oh,
Yeah, and
absolutely.
if I could just add, Chris, on that, that whole notion of talking to somebody new, for 300 straight days is, to me, that's quite overwhelming. But you said something important there that that helps me, because I was that shy, introverted guy, and I didn't really love the whole notion of networking at all, especially when I was younger. But it's telling your story. It's not selling your story. It's not selling yourself. I think for those that are uncomfortable from a networking standpoint, you don't really sell yourself, you share yourself. And when we intentionally, with our book, the first chapter, we talk about HR in terms of understanding who you are and what drives you and what motivates you. And from there, you start to develop the stories that you will find are consistent in almost everything that you do. If you can put the work in to identify what motivates you, what your core values are, and it's not dissimilar to our previous book, Lead It Like Lasso, but then you can start seeing, okay, well, when I was younger, I was really quiet, but I listened. And then how did that become a strength as I got older? It allowed me to see things from other perspectives. And I can still use that today in terms of bringing up some silly story of me not saying a word when I was 8 years old for an entire year. That was a skill that while I thought it was embarrassing and it was not something that was useful for me, it turns out that listening is a pretty powerful skill, and it's a superpower that you can use. But and being able to share that now is important. If you would have asked my 21 or my 25 or even my 28-year-old self, I would have been trying to sell myself, not share myself. And for those that are not comfortable, networking, I think that's something we try to get across in the book, is to understand who you are and then share that. Because you know what? It's interesting. It's interesting. People can put themselves in your shoes pretty quickly.
So I think it's an excellent point. I'm not the extrovert that comes across. To support your concept of storytelling, you have to know who you are, which means you have to know your values, which you talk about how to get at the root of it in the book. And you've got to know what your story is in a language that your audience will care about, right? I look back and realize all of that, to me, is that you have the confidence you need to have is you need to know your values, and you need to know the value you create for people, right? And that's part of what we're getting at, is people don't know themselves.
Yeah.
So it's really hard. That's what we're working on here. It's important to know. I didn't realize that was my advantage. The confidence I had is I knew exactly who I was because someone had helped me get there, and I knew what I was, capable of for others. So that's the point of it. Would you add more to storytelling? That's my interpretation, but there's a relevance to that storytelling piece in the book.
Well, I think the other piece of storytelling is that, let's face it, what's the first question people are going to be asked in an interview? Like, Chris, tell me about yourself.
Yeah.
Right. Or like, explain your resume to me. And people just start going, well,
I was
when I
born
was
in Wilmington.
17, I got right. That's exactly like the moment I hear, well, in kindergarten, I think, oh gosh, I hope they did something for a really long
You
time. We can
lost me
skip through
already.
it. Like, yeah, can we fast forward through that part, please? So knowing that question is coming, when folks can figure out their stories that are aligned to their values, they can tie all of their experiences together. So there's a stat that's 85% of success is based on character skills, not soft skills. That's Carnegie study and
So
Carnegie Foundation.
character, just define
Character skills. So leadership, soft skills, character skills, the things that
Okay.
make you human, your core
Gotcha.
values, right? Like all of any of those leadership, I'm empathetic, I'm a listener, that type of thing. So what we challenge the folks that we talk with to do is to come up with their core values first. And like Nick said, those core stories of how what you were as an 8-year-old ties into who you are today. And that thread of a story is going to highlight your superpower for sure. And then when you're in an interview and someone can say, Chris, tell me about yourself, you can say, I would say I'm an educator at heart. I was a teacher, so I basically sold pre-calculus to 16-year-olds, but then I ran customer success, and this is how I educated my clients. So I can give you threads for my whole life down to from when I was 2 years old and help the little toddler baby learn to walk. Like, I can always tie back an education story. And it's the stories that people remember in an interview as opposed to the technical skills. So when you can tie your story into the technical pieces that you've added to it, they're not just seeing like they can do this job, but we understand what it looks like and they're passionate about doing the job because they've told it with their story.
I'm just curious, what are readers saying to you after they read the book? What are some of the reactions?
Oh man, what's the one that we heard just be? So first, let me tell you about one of the students I worked with, Calvin. I sent him an advanced copy of the book after I had worked with him, and he said, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to make my younger brother read this because this is exactly what we did, and this is what helped me." So the first reaction that we're getting from a lot of folks is like,
I want to gift it to someone who needs.
Yep.
My nephew needs this. Go on, Nick.
No, I think, the feedback that I constantly hear is they pull certain themes out of it. And, it's funny because you're keying off of one of the big themes, which is the storytelling aspect of it, not just the way the book was written, but the importance of the activity and the framework of being able to tell your story. We've met with a bunch of people. We have schools that are interested in piloting this book and creating lesson plans of it because of the thought-provoking journaling questions that we've included in the book. That's been a big hit. I think we get the comment all the time. I love how you framed the CFO department because we talked about this whole notion of investing time. And where are you wasting it? Where are you investing your time to get more time? So it wasn't a traditional financial literacy part of the book. The CFO, we had a twist on it in terms of investing time. But in general, I think the easiest thing or the best thing and the most consistent thing that we hear is, my gosh, this was so easy to read and it made a lot of sense. And I feel like I can take action from it right away.
Yeah. So my dad and I wrote Opposite the Crowd, and it's 400 pages, and it has the same content, but no one will read 400 pages. So, you know what I mean? I wrote it and I won't read 400 pages, but it was a shared story with him, and the stories are good, but that's the point. The point is the fable makes it possible. If I were going to ask you guys to give the audience something from the book, and would you want to talk about the personal mission statement, how to get at your core values, or is there something else teachable as educators you'd like to give my audience from it? Something you want to talk about that they could go do
straight away? Nick, which one came to mind for you?
Could be personal brand. It could be other, whatever it is that hits you guys just right.
That is trying to figure out how to do this without, I want to give people some motivation to actually read the book. I think we, like I said, the area around where Sydney is planning, the one part I liked is she was planning her next 5 years.
Yes.
And we have a section where we talk about adaptability, and she keeps getting challenged with, okay, now assume this goes wrong, right? Now assume this goes wrong. How do you update your plan? Just getting her to think about this whole notion of being adaptable and resilient. And the reason why I say that, it's a very simple exercise. The hard part is setting a goal and outlining a plan to do it. The exercise is now try to torpedo that and blow it up and say, okay, if step 3 doesn't happen, how does the rest of your plan get impacted and how do you adapt? And I think in today's world where with all the technology changing all of our lives almost on a daily basis, one of the most critical skills you can have is to learn, to unlearn, and then to relearn, because things are just changing constantly. And I don't think as human beings, we're very comfortable doing that. And I think anything that we can do to raise that whole notion for people to just grasp onto the fact that, it's fun to fail, to be adaptable, to relearn is a very important lesson. So kind of put us on the spot on that one, Chris. But that's one
Did you
thing that
expect
doesn't get
anything
often talked
less
about
than
on
that, Nick?
podcasts.
You know,
What's that?
did you expect anything less than to be put on the spot?
No, I didn't. I didn't. I just feel like I blabbered for a whole
No, it's
bunch
okay.
there.
If you give a little, you get a lot. So I think if people understand the value, they'll buy the book, and I do believe that. And Nick's talking about the part of the business, director of operations or COO. If you're thinking about, kind of how this applies to your own life, and I think it's a great point you're making, because it's hard enough to write a plan for a year, 3 years, or 5 years. You just get it down, and then what do you mean it's not going to happen
It's not
that
going to
way?
happen. Yeah. Yeah. As a matter of fact, we like talking about the notion of a pre-mortem. Like, assume it's not going to go right.
Versus a post-mortem, do it in advance.
Yep.
Yeah. So, it's a business strategy to say, if this project is going to fail, not if it is, say it's going to fail. Why did it fail? Then if you're thinking ahead of time, well, that went sideways, one particular element of it, then you can start to get proactive and say, how do I avoid that happening? So if you're writing out your plan, you can think the same way.
And if I think it's okay to share, there was a great suggestion of, sounds morbid, but writing your obituary as a way
Absolutely.
to get to a narrative versus just, I want to make 100,000 or something. I work with a lot of business owners, and I ask them to write a holiday toast 3 years out.
Nice.
Just because it's, not just, hey, we got to 50 million, but it's the feeling
Right.
and the involvement. And so there's lots of ways to get there, right?
Yeah.
And that's the key. And I have to tell you, that chapter was hardest for me, is because as CEO of my own life and business, I spend so much time on strategy. I mean, this is a challenge for all of us. You stick with it a little too long versus
Yeah.
learning and
Yeah.
relearning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is the tricky part. I'm working with one school system that is going to get the book for their 7th and 8th graders, and in a leadership program. And she said, I really want to do this activity with them, because they are just, in 7th and 8th grade, they're thinking about whatever path has just been put in front of them. And she's saying, okay, what we need to do, some what ifs, so they can really think about what they want and not just follow along with their friends, follow along with the crowd, the expected path, etc.
Yeah, I'm involved with Junior Achievement, and they try so hard to show these career paths. But as I
Yes.
think about it, there's nothing there that says, well, what happens if you don't get into that school, or what happens
Yeah.
if you know,
Yeah.
and that's the way. If I look back, there's no one straight line path for any of us, right? You've had to
Yep.
make all those adjustments along the way. Concept of 2 ladders in the book.
Yeah.
Somebody
It's
want
one of our
Yeah.
favorites.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Someone
So
want to talk about that?
that is the notion of a credential ladder versus a value ladder. And the credential ladder is typically how most folks think. I'll get a degree, I'll get a job, I'll get a certification, I'll get a skill, and I'll stack the skills, and that's how it will help me get promotions or new jobs, as opposed to really thinking about the value you bring to yourself, to the world, to the organization. And the value ladder will help you much faster than the credentials ladder. If you think just in terms of leadership, typically, I think the number ranges between, Nick and I have looked at the studies, it's between 60 and 72% of all folks who become leaders are accidental leaders. So they have zero training in it. But those are the types of skills that, if you can learn leadership skills, you can show extra value that you bring to the party, which only accelerates growth. So I feel like that's a long-winded version of it. But what do you think, Nick?
No, I think you did it well. It's one of our favorite areas, and to his credit, we should give Bob Berg, who is a huge influencer in our life and who's come to become quite the friend, in his book, The Go-Giver with John David Mann, the whole notion of the law of value, right? Always give more in value than you take in payment. And I think we put in the book, right? If you're developing skills that only help you, it's really just a hobby. When you're developing skills that generate value for other people, that is the multiplier that most people that we know that have been successful, even the initiatives that we've taken on ourselves, we've been most successful when we generate content and even our own internal skills that provide value to other people, for sure.
I think the 2 ladders fits even with what I think is a fairly known story, but the traditional career ladder, where you're talking about it with skills and credentials, but you just go up the organizational chart with a
Yep.
promotion and
Yeah.
title.
Yep.
And I was always taught and now teach more of a lattice, which I think is more of your value ladder. The truth is you're going to move sideways based on skills, by experiences, based on who you have in your network. You're going to go diagonal. Even in today's careers, when you work for 60 years, you go backwards sometimes. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
you work a job you always wanted, right? Versus not just about money at some point. It's hard to imagine we're going to work 60 years and someday we might make that choice, but the Sydneys of the world will sometimes make that choice,
Yeah, for
and do it
sure.
differently. So, all right. So that was one of it's favorite parts of the book. I've had some prompts, but am I missing any of the favorite parts of the book you want to bring forward for the audience?
Well, I think the notion we've talked about personal board of advisors, but really the value of networking is just mission critical. I believe the stat is 75% of positions are ultimately get received by somebody who has had a connection, not just on application alone. That is a really high number, and I think the number was 37%. I got to double check that one, of folks that that really maybe even got the opportunity before anybody else did. They never even necessarily, they may have opened, or posted a job, but it wasn't really posted because somebody else already had an in. So I think the networking element, critical.
Marnie, I put 1,000 people to work a year, and I can confirm your numbers, quite frankly.
Okay, good. Yeah.
And in a market like today, yes, if you can have someone broker you in, like somebody like me, that's a part of it. But almost all cases, the talent we even represent has to work who they know in organizations, regardless of a lead from wherever you get that interview. You better
Yeah.
be talking to your neighbor who's in the warehouse, or your friend who's in human resources or whatever.
Yeah.
And a lot of times your connector, back to that, has connections to where you might be interviewing, right? That's the way it
Yeah.
works. I think you're right on. And the AI thing is even worse than you made it, because AI is writing the resume, but AI is scanning the resume.
Yes, it's also denying it. Yes.
And it is an absolute, in fact, we have organizations today that are like banning resumes. I mean, they're asking for writing samples. They're asking for just different.
We asked for videos because we couldn't
Okay,
even trust writing samples.
there you go. So it'll get undone in some meaningful way,
Yeah.
So, well, that's a great reality there. Anything else that you want to touch on within this pretty cool book?
We hit on all of it, but since we left one out, I'll talk about the product section where it's all about, and this is very big for me in terms of engineering sense, asking the right questions, right? Just not assuming that you have the answer. I think this goes beyond career development and trying to find
It's good
jobs.
life
Don't
advice.
just, yeah, this is trying to understand things. As to why things aren't working, or understand things, what questions to ask, either of yourself to understand yourself better, or of other people in terms of understanding their perspective a little better. I think most could admit in today's world that's probably a pretty good mindset to have. We take another weird angle with the chief product team, and that is the focus of okay, let's not just come to an answer. Let's figure out how to ask the best questions so we all can come to some sort of better guidance.
All right, Sydney learns the best questions are the right ones that get the right outcomes for her. So it makes a lot of sense. Is this going to become a product? Are we heading
Oh,
towards?
we 100% are heading toward a product. Yes. As a matter of fact, when you asked what folks say about the book, typically when they're about an hour in, if it's Audible or, a third of the way through, someone will say, "Oh, I hope you're building that app that Sydney gets in the book." And we are building that app that Sydney gets in the books.
Well, Nick, hurry up. Finish that app. Come on, man.
Yeah,
What are you
it's-
doing on these podcasts? Get that app done.
that is a great question. But yeah, we're close to having a minimal viable product, and we're super excited. We think we're going to get the app in the hands of some some great user initial feedback groups, focus groups as early as January of next year. So we're super excited about that.
I certainly should have opened with this, but I feel like this is, this is my area of expertise. And I've got a talk coming up where I'm talking about that a Burkhardt has hired and coached over 100,000 Delawareans over 53 years. And I can tell you the challenge is the workforce, the Sydneys of the world asked me for 20 minutes and a cup of coffee, right? And how did you handle this, Mr. Burkhardt? And who do you know? And here's my resume. And are you hiring? And who's hiring? By the way, that's sort of how Sydney starts in the book, guys.
Yeah.
But I can tell you 20 minutes with your board of advisors won't get this done. You need a methodology behind which the business of you follows. And I think that is really the key. Is it's not 20 minutes with someone who's successful. You need to have a methodology, and then it's very learnable, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you've just really that, like, one of the biggest challenges of our life is people think they can manage their career in less time than they plan a vacation. That's just not the way it is, right? You got to work on you.
Yeah.
Got to work on business all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
And because if you don't, it's being done for you. I mean, that's especially the branding piece, right? If you're not intentionally taking care of what your persona is in the public, it will be done for you. People will make assumptions.
I just heard that called, Marnie, I wrote it down. I had to look it up. It's called the attention paradox, that if you won't give it attention, do you think anyone else really is ever going to care?
That's a great.
And I kind of get that, right? Like, nobody else is going to care about the business of you if you don't. So I don't know. It struck me as something to research. All right. I think we're doing really well. Where can folks get the book? How do they get on a waiting list for the app? All that stuff.
Great. Well, the book is available on Amazon. So it is called The Business of You by Nick Coniglio and Marnie Stockman. And we have the businessofyou.ai. So that is our website. There's a tab for the Blue app. And if you scroll down, you can hop on the waiting list. So we give some resources every couple of weeks and updates on where we stand. And we're absolutely looking for folks that might want to be some beta testers for us. So if that sounds like you, grab the book and then let us know.
So absolutely. Is there any sort of workbook yet or PDF, or is that coming too at some point around the content, do you think? Or we'll go straight to app today?
Yeah. So there is not. I mean, we have some downloadables. I think based off of we've created similar workbook like content for some webinars that we've done. But yeah, most of it's waiting for the app, unless of course any listener out there works at a school or a university,
or
even corporate learning and is interested in it. We are actively working on some of those old school hard paper lesson plans as we speak. Just reach out to us.
And I didn't mention for our social media handles, we are Blue, the Business of You, all strung together on all the socials.
Blue, the Business of You. We'll make sure that goes in the show notes, if you
Thank
will,
you.
along with some of the other things. Is there a train the trainer plan? There are an awful lot of folks that, I know it's business model, but it's the business of you too. Is there, is there any of that kind of thing planned for folks to leverage your model?
So that is interesting you ask, because we have just recently started having conversations around that. Do you have advice for us on that?
I always do. Probably not on air, but no. No. So what I think is, well, I said it with the 20 minutes, but I think I always say everybody deserves to have an agent, not just rock stars and sports stars. And it's a methodology and a coach. So I think what I have found in this is that there are some people can self-implement. An entrepreneur can read Scaling Up and self-implement. Somebody can read The Business of You and go do their career. And then there are folks that just operate better. I'm telling the educator that, what
yeah.
So I think this applies, that people need bumper lanes for this stuff, and they need people to talk to on the journey. So however it is, communities, exchange groups, coaches, whatever, I think there's a lot of ideas there, where people can talk about your content.
Yeah, we love it.
Love that feedback.
Oh, appreciate you guys. Well, I don't know if you have a third book planned or if we want to come back and debrief on the Lasso episodes, but I do appreciate you guys. I think you're putting out worthy content. I this will go on my list of recommended reads, which
Awesome.
is a good thing, especially because I get asked about career books every darn day of my life. So this goes to number 1 for me because it's a quick read.
Wow.
People will finish it.
That's
Thank
awesome.
you.
Great to have you both on the
Thanks
show.
for having
and,
us.
and Nick, you got to get that app done, man.
You'll be the first to know, Chris.
I hope so. All right.
Awesome.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for having us.